There you have it. So thanks everyone for joining. And I know that this meeting is also going to be another opportunity for some learning for you. And Phil may jump on at some point just to give a bit of an update. And just as an additional update, I did attend the DDD meeting, which impacts the masking and the social distancing and all of those kinds of things. And what they are asking is that we change our policies. They are allowing it to be mask optional and removal of social distancing kinds of limitations so that class spaces can be as filled as we want. We may not necessarily need to continue with the barrier, the dividers that we have. And we then, once our board reviews that, we are then required to send it out to the families. Once all of you review it, and if you have a problem, you need to let me know. And within 5 days, we needing to hear back from families, and then we will be able to proceed. If any families are having difficulty with it, then they've given us some suggestions how to address that. Downside is that we still have to do that temperature taking, and we still have to fill out the JOT forms, the forms that are the questions. Have you been out of state? It doesn't really make any difference anymore because all states have lifted any travel bans, and it's silly, but it is what it is. And so those two things have to stay in place. But everybody's excited with the potential for removing masks and getting rid of social distance kind of thing. Now, of course, the other side has it that COVID has started picking up again in some places. It's not as serious. Apparently, people aren't being as hospitalized as some of the other variants. And, we still have to just take the lead from the CDC. And if we have to go back into masks, and certainly with it being mask optional, that is related to the classroom space. If the hospital says everybody has to be in masks while you're on the floor, then we take the lead of the hospital as well. All right. Charlie, you had a question?
No. This is pertinent to FRA. Is that it?
Or just the hospital?
It's statewide, and then it'll affect all of our classes and all of our locations. But again, because of Project Search, being in a hospital setting, we have to consider that.
Right.
Their regulations.
But the hospital rules could be different than, DDD. Right. Okay. So it's two separate distinctions. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you'll be getting that information in the next couple of days. Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to thank Jocelyn for joining us tonight, and I'm sure you're going to gain a lot of information again, as always. And Jocelyn has been just such an amazing support, part of the steering committee and representing the Neptune DVRS office. And that's where all of your sons and daughters ultimately funnel through. And so she has worked with some of you already because your son or daughter are adults, and others she'll be picking up along the way. So I'm going to turn it over to Jocelyn at this point, who is then going to provide us with an informative evening. Thanks, Jocelyn.
Sure. So just a quick overview. Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services is part of the New Jersey's Department of Labor, and vocational rehabilitation services are mandated by Congress. So every state has a VR agency. We have a sister agency, and that's Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. They provide vocational rehabilitation services, but also they provide birth through old age services as well. So they don't just have VR services, they have mobility and orientation, and they have educational services. So they do a lot more than us, but they do have specific vocational counselors. For Project Search, vocational rehabilitation does some funding for the program. In addition to funding part of the program, there might be people who need supported employment after or a year after Project Search if they haven't been able to find a job. And so that is funded through Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, the supported employment and job coaching. Now, for most of the people who are getting DDD services, they get follow-along services, and the follow-along services are paid through their DDD budget. So if it, for example, somebody is a participant, a graduate of Project Search, they get a job 6 months later, they don't like that job or they end the job, then they would be picked up by DVR for supported employment services. And so if they got placed in another job and once they're stable, they need follow along, the support coordinator would need to be contacted, and they would typically they contact my agency and say we need a form, an F3 form, and they would also contact the supported employment agency to work out the billing issues. So follow along is usually 2 or 3 hours. It could be up to 6 hours a month. But it is just that. They have a job coach who follows people along on an as-needed basis. DVR does the intensive and pays for the intensive coaching. And that's the training part in the very beginning and work towards stabilization. So that's just an overview of what we do. That's part of what we do when we're working with folks who have developmental disabilities. Do you have any specific questions about the services? Because I assume everyone has a son or daughter who's registered with VR.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So any questions?
So DVR kicks in after the Project Search program ends in terms of job support and job coaching.
Right. So in the beginning, Voc
Right.
Rehab pays for part of the skills trainer
Right.
at Project Search.
Right.
Okay.
After Project Search ends and someone graduates, the Project Search continues to help a person find employment, become stable on the job, and they don't need DVR funding for that. What I was told that if someone isn't placed by April of the year after they graduate, then Voc Rehab Services will pick up that placement activity, pay for that through DVR funding, as well as the job coaching if needed, and then the follow along would go through the person's budget.
Okay.
For people who are applying to Project Search, I typically will encourage the parents to apply on their son or daughter's behalf, because if they don't get into Project Search, there might be some other services that DVR can provide to help with job placement.
Right.
Okay.
Because as you know, not everybody is accepted, or maybe people start and they're not interested, or for whatever reason, they may not continue. So Voc Rehab is an agency that does have ongoing employment supports.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Jocelyn, the funding comes from DVR, but FRA will do the coaching. Am I correct?
Right, through Project Search, yes.
Okay, so then, yeah, because maybe, there might be confusion there. Projects, FRA and employability are the coach, and then they will be the follow along as well, correct?
We
Right.
can be, yes.
Yeah, it's up to, it's
up to the
client
individual.
choice. But
Right.
yeah. Mhm.
And, go ahead, Marissa.
No,
Gloria?
and FRA does the job seeking, correct?
Job placement.
Everything.
That's part of the project search responsibility. So
Okay.
part of what we're responsible to do and what DVR is funding is for us to continue to work with your sons or daughters to get them a job after graduation. But like Jocelyn said, that continues for 9 months. After that 9 months, then the DVR funding under Project Search changes. And then it goes through just DVRS. But it's not
Now,
part of the Project Search funding.
Is there a limit as to how much DVRS gives a person? Like a lifetime limit, or is it limitless?
Yeah, it kind of depends on who you talk to. At one point, we were told that 100 hours of what's called pre-placement, and pre-placement is that job search, job preparation phase before a person gets a job. But I asked someone recently, and they said there really is no limit. Vocational rehabilitation is not usually an agency that restricts the amount of time and the amount of services, because it really depends on what a person's abilities are and what their needs are. However, if there's been a pattern of someone who's applied for services 4 or 5 times and really nothing has changed, and the person is just either not interested in employment or has significant barriers, there are times that DVR will say, we don't have anything else to offer. And so services could end. There are times where people want to reapply, and it's rare, but there are times that people will say, no, we're not going to open your case again because of what the pattern has been. People do have a right to do an appeal for any decision with vocational rehabilitation. And the way people can do that is through contacting the supervisors or the managers. They can also go through disability rights, and disability rights has attorneys, and attorneys will contact us and ask to see the case file and advocate on behalf of the person. So there's always appeal processes in place. A second set of eyes to make sure that people aren't being denied services unfairly.
Jocelyn, couldn't you switch over to, let's say, DDD and get, supported employment through DDD if need be?
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I know some people don't want to use their budget
Yeah,
for that. Yeah.
it is quite costly. Yeah, it is.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But
However,
absolutely.
I'm sorry. Yeah. However, what we have found is that there are some situations where we have gotten someone a really good job, and we have done the job coaching, but after 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, the reality is there's a part of the job that the individual worker really can't do independently. And at that point, then it is more cost effective for the family to use their DDD budget and to hire someone as a direct support person. And that direct support person can go with them on the job to help them with those pieces of tasks that they really need. And in that case, DDD, if someone's working, we have a few people who are working full time, but they need that DSP person every morning because there's a piece of their job that requires significant counting, and the individual can't count. And once that piece is done, then the worker is independent again. So the DSP is only needed 5 days a week from 8 until 11 o'clock or something. So that is an option as well.
And it's much less on your budget as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
much less on your budget. Yeah. Yeah, that's another avenue, which is very
Yeah.
good.
Where
John-
do you find-
It could be, like someone, it could be, you could hire them through your budget, through PPL. And, what that entails is you have to hire them. You are their employer, and they are your employee. And, what happens with that is, then they tap into your budget and they take the money from your budget, but it's a lot cheaper. And if you find somebody that's really qualified, it works. And we have, I think, Nancy, we have a lot of families that have been doing that now, because the budget is just too, like the amount of money on the DDD supported employment has been very high,
Especially there, the reality is that there are some individuals whose limitations in terms of their ability to become independent is not following the common trajectory that's expected under DVR. DVR has, you can't be there 5 days a week or 3 days a week supporting someone endlessly, because the goal under DVR is for that person to have enough support to become independent in their job. And then you have that long-term follow along. So the people who are really needing more consistent support for their entire time that they're working, they are far better served by using their DDD budget.
Marissa, you had a question?
No, I was gonna say, where do you find somebody like that?
You have to look, you ask around.
There's
I've been-
agencies. There's also,
There's agencies.
there's 3 or 4
but also-
agencies.
Yeah, there are. But if you know someone, sometimes it's word of mouth. I haven't been successful with that, but but there are agencies, some agencies, and you interview the person and, you tell them what you expect from them. And, you basically, are their employer, and you review it, you give them a job description, you make up a job description, and you tell them what your expectations are, just like you would hire an employee. And that you could do through an agency too, because agencies, when they send you a person, they expect you to interview them. And they do, I think, all the background checks for them as well.
But Angela, in terms of that hiring, so we would be the employer, but it would be all run through DDD, meaning like taxes and all of that, all of the
You have to do that through
responsibilities.
PPL, not
Yes.
DDD, it's PPL, right, Nancy?
It's the fiduciary, it's the financial media,
Yeah.
between that. Or if they're hired through a company, then the company does it.
Yeah, the company does everything for you, but if
Yeah.
it's with PPL, they do some of the work, and I think they're required to take CPR and things of that nature. But it would be through PPL, you would be the employer of record, and they would be your employee. And that's good if you know someone and you have someone like a neighbor or word of mouth. That's how-
Family member.
Yeah, a family, you can use a family member as long as they're not the guardian, I believe, Nancy.
I
As
think
long as
so.
they're not the guardian, yeah.
Okay.
Jocelyn, would you just touch base again on the difference of the job coaching versus long-term follow along?
Or with job coaching, that I consider the second phase of supported employment. So the 3 phases of supported employment is pre-placement, which is the actively looking for a job, preparing for a job, considering and researching different jobs. And once a job is found, then that starts the second phase, which is job coaching. So the job coaching is intensive on-job support as needed, though. Not everybody needs a job coach there during their entire work shift. If they don't, the job coach is not there. I've had some folks who just do not want a job coach with them at their work site. I've had a few people say, well, I don't want anyone standing near me. Other coworkers are going to say, why is that person with you? And who is that person? And and I understand that. So they don't want the job coach there. So the coaches are creative in helping people understand the benefit of them being there, but they can also be creative in providing supports off-site. So if, for example, a person I'll use cart collecting, they might be outside and the job coach won't approach the client. They will watch them from a distance and then discuss whatever they see as barriers, or discuss how well they're doing, but they're basing it on what they see. Some people will need 100% off-site coaching, which means the coach is not there at all, and the client has to be upfront about what some of their challenges are. The coach is, of course, going to ask specifically about interactions with the supervisors, interactions with the customers or with coworkers, and then address that as best as possible in an off-site way. So it could be doing lists, doing a checklist, having people write down what some of the issues are, and then they would go over it a day that the person is not working. So we talked about pre-placement, which is the first phase. Second phase is job coaching. And then the third is the follow along. After a person is on the job and stable and they're pretty much independent, then they move into that follow along phase where they only have sporadic contact with the job coach. Some job coaches will contact the employer. Sometimes they contact the employee, and sometimes both. If they're calling the employer or stopping in, they might say, well, how's Nancy doing? Is there any problems? Anything you think needs to be addressed? And then the job coach can address it.
And that's paid for by DVR as well. It's a different pot of funding. It's billed differently on whoever your job coach person is, company is, but it's still paid for by DVR. And it can also be paid for, and it could also be paid for by DDD. But the follow along, it's actually set up as a grant where they award, we have to apply, as one of the multiple kind of job coaches. We have to apply, it gets approved in July, and then we have X number of hours that we can provide in long-term follow-along, which, can go on for a year or 2 years. Some people may need a check-in only once every 3 months. And other people we try, to be sure that they might have knowledge around, how to ask for time off, or suddenly there's a new manager and it creates some instability. But that can be paid for either by DVRS or DVD.
Nancy, just correct me if I'm wrong. Usually when they're working with the job coach and the job coach feels that they don't really need specific job coaching, so to speak, like you said, well, maybe from 8 to 11, they need help with the counting, and then they're okay by themselves. So the job coach will go in and analyze the situation and just say, you know what, you might be better off getting, getting a self-hire for yourself rather than going through your DDD budget and working through that.
As job coaching, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so they will work with you with that. It's not that they're gonna just say, oh, no, we're not doing job coaching anymore. They will,
Yeah.
gradually go over the process with you. So it's not that they're just gonna say, oh, no, we're not doing this anymore. And, so they'll explain the whole situation to you. And then they'll just say, we specifically feel that this task is what they need help with. And then you'll work with them and you'll have a discussion and then you'll just take it from there. A PPL is like an intermediary. I'm sorry, I just used the word. It's like an intermediary. And what they do is they provide payment for you. You're the employer. So it's like, like some of those not PayPals, but some of those companies that pay for, they get, or employment, they take care of the payroll. And that's
Like
what PPL does, right? Yeah, right, Nancy, am I correct in saying that? PPL
Yeah.
does it? Yeah.
So when we do any of the billing,
Right.
for all of you who already have a DDD budget, all of that billing, you're signing off papers and stuff, that's going to DDD, but it's actually going to PPL. PPL looks at it and they put it into their system and then they pay us through direct deposit. So, and that's how they set up a lot of the individual direct support people, is that they pay them through direct deposit into their bank account and no money is exchanged. It's not like they're going to give you the money to pay the DSP. It's paid directly. And with the laws that say that everyone who's working 30 hours is entitled to 1 hour of paid sick time, PPL will also keep track of that. So those individuals can also get some paid sick time. Now, if they're working under a company, which is better in some ways for that direct support person, they could be working for 3 different families. And they will accrue all of that sick time through the 3 different families. And that one company who they're working for will take care of that and manage their sick time and all of that. If one person is working just with you, and then they're hired separately by a different company, then it's each situation is a separate kind of thing. It doesn't blend together as a total amount of accrued hours. And that helps for some people who, are really looking to do this kind of a job full time. But if you have someone who's individual, then they don't need to. Go ahead.
I just have a question. So once the interns finish, like June 20th, it's over. What is the next steps? Like, are we like part of, like, when are they looking for jobs or what, like, how does that happen? Like, is it a once a month thing? Is it what is?
It's
The job is not going to be obtained immediately. It could be, it can't be, whatever, but.
right.
What is
And that's one of the things that does create a period of time that I think is pretty unsettling, because they're used to doing the 5 days a week. Now they've built their stamina, they can do 5 days a week. We're hoping that now, George, I hope you've all met George, who's taken Teresa's place, and we're sorry for the changes, but life happens. And so he's going to start working now with the interns, following up from where Teresa left off and seeing if there can be a job that's ready right away. But if not, then there's this period of time that they're at home and they're going, oh my gosh, now what? Now what do I do? Because they're sitting without something to do. So, some of the people have, decided to take some days and go back to, program-based kinds of services, whether it be at us or primetime or whatever it is. As they are looking for jobs, the skills trainer, the employment specialist, and George, they will continue reaching out every week and still building whatever other skills and trying to work through and see what kind of job opportunities are out there. And then, they'll help bring them to any interviews, unless your son or daughter does not want someone to go with them. And, they will then spend the time getting them into a job. Now, we were very lucky last year, very fortunate that despite COVID, I think 3 of the people were placed in a job within the first month or so. And then 2 more people got another job, and 2 people, one is still looking. She wasn't really sure that she wanted a job after all of this. And, it takes some time for some people to realize that, no, this is a lifelong commitment to working. So, it depends. One of the people was like, I don't want to work. I want my summer. This is my last summer and I don't want to work until, and then, then he was willing to start looking in September. But by October, November, he had a job. But in the meantime, you do have that downtime, and it is, we have discussed it, Phil and I and the team have discussed it, because it's a little bit of a concern, because it's like a cliff, like here they were going 8 to 3 and they're working and they're doing, and then there's nothing. And I think that really has a difficult time emotionally for the people, they're used to going, they've been built up to, like, I'm getting this job, and now there's nothing. So it's hard for them, and it's hard for you as parents as well. So we are
But that is
trying
part
to
of the
think of,
reason they start with job development in April. So they'll
Right.
meet with the job developer in April in a little more consistent.
Yeah.
right.
They work on resumes, they work on looking for jobs. And he takes care of all of that, but it's a process, and sometimes it's not always a quick process, like we all know when we're looking for jobs. So
Yeah. And, all of the interns now have some ideas around what they would maybe like to do and what they absolutely don't want to do. But George will be, looking for those things that really strikes their interest, and then wants to look somewhere around where you live. Because, transportation is a constant drawback to employment. And that's why they'll also be working more on travel training in this last quarter as well, so that, if they haven't learned how to use Access Link or Uber or the train or things like that, those are some of the things that they will be learning in this last quarter. Because they need to know how to get to and from a job, and it doesn't necessarily want to always depend on you. You have your own work schedules and, that kind of stuff. And some jobs have too much flexibility that's needed. So there's, a real benefit in them learning to use transportation. So they'll be doing some train excursions. They will learn how to use apps for Uber and Lyft, and, how to deal with that comfortably and safely. And they will also learn how to use the Access Link app. Now, some of your sons and daughters who are older have already used some of those things. So that, that's familiar to them already, and others haven't even started yet. Jocelyn, would you also then address, what about, now they're in a job, they've been in a job and they've been doing great in their job for 9 months, a year and a half, and now they don't like it anymore, or they lose the job, or whatever it is. What happens again? Does your case get closed? Do they have to reopen? How does that process work?
All of the above. Usually when someone's stable on a job and they're in follow along, 3 months later, their case is closed. Now, I'm an old timer, and so I might do things differently than other people. I don't usually close a case in 3 months, because in my experience, things happen, and I don't want to close someone's case too early. The job ends, or the person, as you said, Nancy, decides they don't want the job, or the business closes, and then we have to open the case again. So I tend to leave cases open 4 to 6 months after a person is stable on the job. And it depends on the person. There are people I've worked with over in the last 15 years, I might have opened their case 4 or 5 times. So like, I know them a little bit and I know I need to wait longer. So if the case is already open, there's 2 options. One is for them to get replacement using the long-term follow-along funding that is available through DVR. And so they can get more hours in that long-term follow-along to help them find a job. For other scenarios, we're going to go back through those 3 steps: pre-placement, intensive job coaching, and long-term follow-along. So it really depends on the situation. I think, though, that with follow-along, if they're using their DDD budget, the support coordinator might say, go back to DVR, start with pre-placement again, and go through that process. So if a case is closed, then the case needs to be reopened. A lot of times, if it's reopened within a year, the process is a little easier to determine eligibility, because let's say in my office in Neptune, we keep our physical case files for about 3 years. So we just grab that case out of the drawer, use the documentation that's in there to determine eligibility, and start the plan, write up a new plan pretty quickly. We also give people the opportunity to work with a different supported employment vendor if that's what they want to do. But once they're stable on the job, there are options to get other employment, like all of us. I mean, I've been with DVR for almost 30 years, but I know a lot of people don't stay at one job for 30 years anymore. So, we don't expect our clients to stay in one job for forever.
Do people have the choice, option, opportunity? If they're in a job and they find they're really not liking it, can they say, I really want to look for a new job and use their DVR funds, even if they have a job?
They can, as I said, there's really nothing that's set in stone, but we do want to give people an opportunity to have a second opinion, so to speak. So a DVR counselor might work with the person on identifying specifically why they want another job. If they want another job because they don't like the new manager, we want to give them an opportunity to learn that some part of working is dealing with different people and different personalities. But often people are not happy in a job for one reason or another. I have someone now who does not have a DDD budget, has some processing problems, but really is spending a lot of money getting to work, and it's just not worth it. It's just that simple. It was a first job. It's good experience. But again, I understand it's financially, it's not worth it for her to work and spend that much money on a cab. She doesn't drive. She's not going to drive. So there's all different reasons, and we listen to them.
Okay.
Are there any concerns
Yeah.
about
There,
that work search process?
anybody have any questions for Jocelyn? She's a bundle of information. I think she can run the whole DVR program. Jocelyn,
no.
I think you can.
No. I'm just a foot soldier, and I've been around.
but You're
boots on
very
the ground
knowledgeable,
for a
and you've been
while.
a tremendous help to us from the inception. I mean, you've been there for us through the whole thing. So, and anybody, she's like the best person to ask. So if you have any questions, just ask away.
So the work search process starts with George. And once they finish up in June, it continues with George? And then
Absolutely.
Yes.
you come into place when?
If a person doesn't have a job by April of,
April.
right, so for Jordan, it would be April of 2023, then the DVR funding would kick in
Okay.
for the placement.
All right.
Mhm.
Okay,
And we know that it
Well,
can
hopefully
be very, I'm sorry, Marissa, go ahead.
Hopefully with the way the market is now, the job market, it looks like pretty good for our guys because so many people want jobs, are looking for employees.
Right.
And they are calling us to say, oh, we understand you have. So, there's a big place in Lakewood that, really has a lot of different jobs. It's a shipping company or something. But, they have a lot of jobs that are on the dock, that are in the office, that kind of stuff. Well, it's great, but not many people live down there. There's another employer who's been calling us every couple of months. Yeah, that might work. Who has a business, a restaurant, and they're down in Belmar. And, do we have anybody in Belmar who wants to work at a restaurant? But this is a period of time that has seen the largest number of people with disabilities employed. The numbers have never been as high because the employers are realizing, oh, there's a community of people who are good workers. And now that they're not flooded with everybody else, they're finally, that pecking order sort of goes, and all of a sudden our people have been elevated to a high commodity. So that's a wonderful thing. But it's been interesting because, as I said, a number of the people, when they then realize, oh, project search is over, then they're like, I really don't want to work. Well, maybe I only want to work 4 hours. The goal of Project Search is to be working a minimum of 16 hours a week. So 16 hours is, a fair amount of time, but all of your sons and daughters have shown that they can work full time. They could easily do a 40-hour-a-week job. And, some of our people, without the rigor of having someone with them all the time and the breaks for the classroom stuff and that, that 16 to 20 hours is a mark that sort of fits them long term, because this is a program that has a lot of involvement with other people that are always keeping them on track, and that you're always connecting every 3 months. And there's all these different, supports. Once they're out in the work world, if they don't make friends on the job, if they're finding that, they're the only young person and it's a bunch of older people, or if it's mostly younger people and they're teenagers and they can be a little, or 20-year-olds, and they can be a little rough in terms of their interactions and discounting, then it's not necessarily as warm and fuzzy as Project Search. And so they may not like staying in those situations, And then you have situations like my daughter, who gets a job. She's all enthusiastic. This is the best thing. I can't wait. And then 3 or 4 months, they don't like me. They're talking about me. She has perception changes of the boss expects too much, or the boss isn't giving me enough information, or, whatever it is. And so she tends to cycle through jobs. She'll get a job, she's all enthused, and then she burns herself out in about 4 months. And then, we have to wait for another 5 or 6 months before it cycles back around that she's then willing to take that next step again. So, there's all kinds of situations. And while all of your sons and daughters are looking really strong in this moment for a good 25, 30 an hour a week job, that might not be what you want. Your life may be structured that you don't want them working that much. And we certainly see that as well. But I think in general, the 16-hour-a-week minimum is what we hope to have. And certainly the team will work very diligently to try and find that right fit for your son or daughter.
Kind of along those lines, I have had, not from Project Search, but I've had clients who are getting Social Security disability specifically, who are concerned that now jobs are offering people $16, $17, $18 an hour. And their concern is, I'm going to go over substantial gainful activity. I don't want to lose my Social Security. And similarly, employers can pressure. I'm not saying that they always do, but there's a perception that if I apply for a job and this employer is desperate for employees, they're going to strongly encourage me to work 30 hours a week. So then we provide counseling to them about how to advocate for themselves, how to express that their availability is part-time, that they are going to show up and be a good employee part-time. And if that meets the employer's needs, then they would be willing to take the job. But if it doesn't, then they'll move on. So that's a little bit of an unexpected situation for me, at least for me and the clients that I've worked with.
Yeah. And that's why also remember that fortunately now we do have Imelda on our team, and Phil and Cindy, who are Social Security benefits counselors, and they will be able to help negotiate through that period of time. If and when your son or daughter is working at 30 hours a week or 25 hours a week, and they're getting, we've had situations where our job seekers are hired and getting paid more than our job coach. And so that's been very awkward, very awkward. Our funding is through DVR. No offense, Jocelyn, and you have no control over it, but DVR does not pay us well enough to pay the staff. On $52 an hour, it sounds like a lot, but that 1 hour takes 3 hours of service or more. And then there's the billing people, and then there's, the oversight people. So, it does not amount to a lot. And, so it does get to be a little bit of a juggle there, an awkward kind of situation when the job seekers offered a job at $20 an hour. And it's like, oh my gosh. So, yeah.
I always take those folks myself, Nancy,
Why,
just to
Phil?
make it less awkward.
Yeah, the funny part is because you get paid 52, but the job coaches don't get paid that amount of money.
58 now. Right?
58.
But still,
Well, and that's the point, is that 1 hour of direct service takes 3 hours to do. You have the travel time, you have the write-up time, you have
the write-up time, yeah.
the preparation time, you have the follow-up calls and stuff like that you don't get paid for. You only get paid when you see them in person. So while that sounds like a lot, $58, divide that by 3, it's not a lot. And then you also consider there's overhead, there's mileage, you have staff supervision, the billing staff, all of that has to come out of that same $58. It's not going only directly to the job coach.
And they expect specific documentation. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this. It's not like, oh yeah, he went to work today. He followed this, his task was this, is that. It's very specific.
Yeah.
Very specific.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think, Jocelyn, does that hit all of the unusual and yet somewhat more common situations?
Well, yeah, I think so. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
Jocelyn, you're not retiring soon, are you?
I hope not.
I plead the fifth.
That's scary.
I'm too young. I'm only 62, but things change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And agencies change, and we used to have support staff, and Now we have one person. And so, you know,
Oh my gosh.
it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. Now, maybe other
Wow.
people, it's not difficult for them. Maybe the young people are great at multitasking, but you know, I'm not. And I
Yeah.
don't hide that.
Yeah.
Boy.
We hear you.
Okay.
Marissa, were you going to add something else?
No, we were not accepting her resignation.
I second
I
that.
second that.
Yeah,
I
heard it.
heard it.
Very nice. I
Full
appreciate that.
Well, maybe we'll
Again,
keep you.
I'm a little young for that, but you know, my brain sometimes says otherwise.
We'll keep
I
you
hear you.
young.
Yeah. Right, if there's no other questions, Susan, I know you joined us a bit late, but we have recorded this. So, you know, we can then send it out, okay?
And if anyone has specific questions for me, you can always email me. I don't know if you guys are aware, but Folk Rehab has a new phone number. And, but the email addresses have not changed. So our main office number has changed as well. If you call the 775-1799, you'll hear a message giving you the new number.
Okay.
Okay.
But for most of us, email's the better way to reach us.
Great.
All right.
Thank you so much for all the information.
Oh, you're very
Thanks,
welcome.
Jocelyn.
Yes, thank you.
Very useful.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
Jocelyn.
welcome.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
And then we have Phil, who's joined us for a bit tonight. So ta-da, we'll let Phil add his extra information here now.
Yes, good to see everyone. We are obviously going to be starting the process of staggering the interns into their new departments next week. I'll send out a more detailed email, but I met with the team today. We started working on our plan. It went so well last time where we had those that weren't starting right away virtual. So we're going to continue that and do that once again. So I'll send out an email that has all the specifics around it. Once again, it's been a little bit of a challenge getting the department set up, but we've managed to do it. So we feel pretty good about that. There's a couple of details that still have to be worked out with some of the departments. We're going to start on Monday with Pam and Sagar. I actually just got off the phone with Sagar. We just had a nice long conversation. So we're going to start with Pam and Sagar next week on Monday. The rest will be virtual. The plan is is to give Pam and Sagar those first 3 days of support and then start staggering in some of the other interns on Thursday. But what we always do is we try to be flexible. It's always challenging getting the interns out in the department, but we want to be flexible. We don't want to step away from an intern before they're comfortable. Generally, it takes 2 or 3 days. So, you know, I always plan for the 3 days, but if that is at all adjusted or needs to be adjusted, I'll let you all know. We're just excited to get started in this next department.
Where do they, do they know what departments they're going to already?
We started having the conversations again. Pam and Sagar's departments were 100% solidified, so we knew we could start with them. Most of the other departments, we believe it's going to be solidified in the next few days. So Sagar will be going into the blue vest. He'll be working with different nursing supervisors. He was asking me lots of questions about that, so we had a great conversation about it.
Yeah,
He's
he
got
told me
nerves.
call you.
Yeah.
I guess he was downstairs and talking to you, but I was not aware. But he did say he has some questions and he's going to call you and figure things out. When I was
Good.
asking him questions.
Yeah, no, great. So we're excited about that. So that's Sagar. Pam Pam will be going into a kind of a split, the breast center and linens. So in the breast center, they are bringing in some training students that are going through their training process. So it's going to be very packed in that department. So they asked if we could do a split day. The linens department is really struggling right now with staffing. So Pam is going to start out in linens in the morning, in the AM, and then do the breast center in the afternoon. And by the way, Will made it very clear to us, if Pam is interested in working in food services when she finishes the program, hint, hint, she's got a home for us. She's got a home there. So he was very pleased with her. Jordan, the plan is for us to for Jordan to go into pathology. In the pathology department, he'll get a chance to do what Colin is doing now, and taking the samples and giving them to the processors and then delivering them throughout that pathology lab. So that's pretty exciting. KDB food services, which is great because there's one of the things that we always try to do when we go into a job is to develop natural supports. And they're already in place there. They're phenomenal in that department. There's always someone working. You know, they kind of tandem. Every task that they do it kind of in tandem, which is great. So that should be a good one for her. KDS. Also, there's murmuring about her actually having an opportunity to come back to that department as a paid position in facilities management. So we'll see how that all goes, but the plan now is for her to continue developing those skills in medical records. And Raina is not Sal. She's very different than Sal, but a phenomenal mentor. So she's going to be a great role model as a woman for Katie. But she is very exacting. She has some very strong standards and expectations. And that's going to be an opportunity for her to continue to grow. So that should be exciting. And then, Colin's not on with this, but I think that's everyone. So we're excited. This has been beyond a challenging year. I've seen things this year that I haven't experienced in the previous years, to say the least.
Never thought we'd see.
Never thought we'd see. Boggles my mind. I'm just blown away by some of the stuff we're seeing. But the interns have been extremely resilient. This group is really just so communicative and expressive, you know, and you know, they reach out to me all the time. They text me, they call. I love it. I walked in the other day and, you know, Jordan was telling me about the medal that he got in basketball. And I told him I can't wait to get a chance to play some basketball with him so I can show him what an old man can do when he gets on the court. He'll be surprised, but so I'm looking forward to that. In the next month, we're also going to do our next phase of the travel training. So we're going to have a day where we ride the train, and we, you know, learn all about riding the train, learn about the app, you know, reduce fare opportunities, all that. We'll do all that learning, then we'll actually take a train ride, and we're going to treat them to lunch. So we will do that in the next month, probably towards the end of the month. I think I was looking at the 25th or the 27th. I think it's a Wednesday, towards the end of the month. So we'll send details on that. And then in May, we will do some travel training around all the different ride share programs, Uber, Lyft. We'll also talk about Access Link and some of those things as well. So we're now recruiting for the next group. That's one of the things that always just boggles my mind. The year goes by so very fast. And that was one of the things that Sagar was saying to me just now when we were talking. He said, you know, you said this was going to go fast, and I thought you were crazy. But he was like, you were Saga tells it like it is, so I like it that. He said you were right. You know, it really has gone by fast. So we're hoping that this last internship is an opportunity to continue growing. I say it all the time. It doesn't sound like a great sales pitch, but learning and growing through Project Search is messy. It's just messy. And, you know, people are like, oh man, like you got to come up with a better sales pitch than that. But I think that is the best sales pitch because it mirrors what real life looks like. So, you know, our interns are dealing with some very real, this year more than most, some very real things on a daily basis that we all have to try to figure out how to navigate when we're in the workplace, you know, so that's just the reality of it. And, you know, it's challenging, you know. When I first came on, Nancy was talking about Michelle and, you know, the ups and downs of the job. We have a young person that I just came to see before I came in here and before I had a conversation with Saga. I went out to see her at her job. Does really well at her job, but was really having some anxiety around work and all kinds of things was going, you know, through her mind. And, you know, I got a chance to go over and see her this evening and sit with her for a little bit at the job. And, you know, we were talking about all the wonderful things that she's doing on the job. And as we got to the end of the conversation, I was asking her, you know, like, well, what are you not doing well in the job? And she said, you know what, Phil, I do everything good in this job. And she had a smile on her face. So that's just part of the journey of us always trying to navigate and figure all these different things out. And sometimes it feels overwhelming and sometimes things don't work out. And sometimes things go in a direction we don't expect it. I never get too crazy about it. And some people, you know, it might come off as if I'm cold. It's not cold at all. It's like, it's good when things happen that we have to try to figure out, because when we send these young men out and women out in the world, they're going to have so many things that they're going to have to figure out. And that's what the reality is for all of us. So as me, you know, this year has taught me a lot about myself, and I'm still learning and growing myself, because there's things that I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I don't do well when I don't have control over situations. And so there's been so many things over these last 2 years that I have no control over. I think I'm a relatively intelligent person, and there's been so many things where I don't have an answer. And so that's hard for me, you know, as you know, everyone has a story, right? So we're all just trying to figure it out. So thank you all for all your support. The meetings went really, really well last week. So that was, you know, good to be a part of. And look for in the next day or so, an email from me with all the specifics on how we're going to roll the interns out to the departments.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So much, Phil.
All right. And I will
Phil,
be calling you all, as I said, too, and just having individual conversations with everyone. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So I will be calling you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
one of the things we were talking about was George starting with the job search aspects this month.
Yeah, we talked about that in the meetings. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
So
everyone got a
everybody's
chance
comfortable
to,
with that?
everyone got a chance to meet George, and George, I'm just thrilled with George. He has a really great attitude. He comes with a lot of experience. So we've been blessed
A lot.
in that regard. And, you know, already thinking about some different things. So George is going to help me with the virtual next week, which will give him an opportunity. He's been out at the hospital a couple of times and seen them in the departments. It'll give him an even more understanding of the interns working with them virtually next week as well. So he's excited about that as well. So it's all good stuff. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. And we'll
All
have to
right.
see, Marissa also raised her hand about the place in, just acknowledging that she's close to Lakewood with that company that's down there that you went to see. I'm forgetting their name right now, but the shipping company.
Estes Transport.
Estes,
Yes.
yes.
My
Transport.
husband works there.
Who?
Who's that?
My husband works there.
Oh,
Does he really?
my
My
gosh.
husband's a regional truck driver for them.
Wow. It was
Oh.
one, I mean, you know, Tyler and I got an opportunity to go out, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago. and what warm people. I mean, it was phenomenal there. I really liked the environment and, you know, everyone there in the office. So yeah, it was nice. So we're hoping that we'll be able to do something. Yeah, moving
Yeah,
forward.
Jordan likes to pick things up and put things down. He's
They-
strong.
And that's a big part of, I've been doing, you know, we've been short staffed, so I've been doing so much job coaching and things, but a big part of what I'm always trying to do and what George will do is just getting out and meeting people and meeting businesses and establishing relationships. We had a young man that worked at Mazda Recycling
Oh,
for a long while, and then he moved on to another role, but I had been going back and forth with Mazda Recycling for about a year. Just keeping contact, going out and seeing them. They put in the new plant. You know, I went out when they, you know, made the renovations and just establishing those relationships. So in the ideal world, that's what I'm getting the opportunity to do a lot of that, so that we can get those opportunities. And then when we get into the job placement, this was one of the things I was telling Sagar too. Project Search is wonderful in that you're developing soft skills, you're developing some hard skills, obviously, as well. But once we get to the end of the program, then we really focus on, well, what is a good fit for you? What is the right job for you? So because you worked in medical records in the hospital doesn't mean you have to go work a job in medical records. It means you develop some skills in medical records that are hopefully transferable. You develop some soft skills because you're in a real work environment. You're learning how to navigate work environments. And now let's start really working with George and myself and the team and figuring out, you know, what is going to be a good fit. And what we want these fits to be are meaningful, you know, meaningful. We were really hampered after the first year of the program because we were right in the middle of COVID. And yet we still were able to place all the interns in jobs. Last year's group, again, you know, still dealing with COVID. We have been able to place all except for one in a job. We're now working with
I mentioned.
two. Yep, because you know, one of the young men was in a job but didn't ultimately feel it was a good fit. And you know, I went in and I talked to him and I talked to the supervisor there, and we felt, you know, it was right to move on, and we did it the correct way. We put in the correct notice. We did everything the correct way, and now we're working with him again. And I look forward to all 6 of our interns this year being placed in jobs as well, and jobs that they really want to do, and jobs that really suit them well. So I'm excited about that.
Sounds good.
Encourage them to come to the job club meetings too, please. I know Jordan responded and said he would be there. Katie S responded and said she would be there.
Tomorrow, right, Bill?
It's tomorrow evening at
tomorrow.
6. Yep.
Yeah.
Tom and myself run the job clubs every month, and we have phenomenal guests every month. This month we have a woman, she owns a business called Fairy Hair. And I was wondering why the name, and she was emailing me and telling me she's gonna wear the outfit too as she does the meeting. And I said, what outfit? She said, my fairy outfit. What are you talking about? So fairy hair is a real thing. So I can't wait to see what that's all about. But we
Maybe
have
I'll stop
phenomenal
by.
guests every month. And you know, it's just great conversation. When I envisioned the job club, I envisioned, you know, many times all of us have been in, I call it contextual experience. We've been in all kinds of situations, so we know how to navigate those situations. A lot of the folks that we're working with, they haven't been on a job interview, or they haven't worked a job, or they haven't had a supervisor that they struggled with. So we bring together everyone in the job club, and we bring the guests in every month, and it's an opportunity for everyone to get contextual experience together, because this person has gone on and done something that you haven't done, and you can learn something from it. It's been very good. I guess that was my cue. It was like my Oscar speech was too long, and they started playing the Oscar music. So shut up and get off the stage, I guess, right? Good seeing you all.
Good seeing you,
Thank
Phil.
you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great couple of weeks. See you
You too.
soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Danielle. Bye, Marissa.
Bye, Daniel. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.